happens to my good friends? Is Hope not going to be here?
No, she can't.
And then how are we doing public comment?
Well, Ashley will ask you
Okay. John, are you planning to speak? Or are you just here to observe? Okay, I just wanted you to sign up if you want to speak during, okay, all right. Okay, so I think it's 5:33, so let's call this meeting of the Mashpee Public School Committee to order, January 5th, 2022. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right, thank you. I also want to begin by recognizing, by saying that the Mashpee Public Schools recognize and honor the many generations of Wampanoag people who have lived and been sustained in this territory for more than 10,000 years. Next, we would like to ratify tonight's agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to ratify the agenda.
Okay, motion by Kathy. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Matt. Are any,
Madam Chair,
yes,
I believe that there has to be a vote to close the public hearing. And that's not listed.
okay. Yeah, I don't see one.
So just to reiterate what I had said, so the audience can hear, I believe that it requires a vote to close the public hearing, and that's not indicated on the current agenda.
Do we need a vote to open the public hearing? Because there isn't a vote for that either.
Technically, yes. Although,
I thought that the whole meeting was the public hearing, so,
no,
okay. So are you proposing that we add a vote at 5:40 to open the public hearing and then a vote afterwards to close it?
there would need to be at least one vote taken to open it. And then it'd be up to the committee to determine whether to close it or to continue it.
Okay. All right, so we'll add that at the 5:40 time mark. Any other comments or suggestions? Okay, so motion to ratify with that amendment. Kathy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Brian,
Yeah.
Don?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Okay, so next on the agenda is public comment. I don't believe we have any in the room. Do we have any on the Zoom?
No.
Okay, so then we're just moving on to the minutes from December 15th on pages 1 to 3 of the packet. Does anyone have any? Well, actually, I'll just say I move to approve these. Is there a second?
Just to ratify.
Pardon me?
You just made a motion to ratify yourself. Yeah. So I'll second that.
Okay, is there any discussion or edits to the minutes? I don't have any. Okay, Kathy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Brian,
Abstain.
Don?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Okay, at this point, I will take a motion to open the public hearing on the superintendent's recommended FY '23 budget.
Madam Chair, I believe you need to wait till 5:40, which is the published time for the.
Oh, geez.
public hearing.
Thanks, Don.
Um,
Do you want to switch seats?
no,
Okay.
Don't want you to get in trouble.
Okay, so I guess, so in that case, do we just move to the next item and just come back?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, so
2 minutes,
Patty,
just so you know. It's only 2 minutes.
okay. It's only 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Patty, what would you like to do?
I would prefer to wait since it's sort of loaded.
Okay, just wait for 2 minutes.
And I don't know if Mackenzie and John want to swing so they can see the screen. I don't know, because
You have a copy of it in front of you, John?
Oh, I can't really hear.
Yeah. Do you have a copy of it in front of you? Because if you want to move your chair, you'll be able to see it on the screen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, now I will entertain a motion to open the public hearing on the superintendent's recommended FY '23 budget.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Kathy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Brian. Any discussion? All right, Kathy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
and Dawn?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. And I'll turn it over to you, Superintendent DeBoer.
okay, so what you have in your packet is our budget narrative. It's my recommended budget at this point in time, the FY '23 budget. So the narrative that's in the packet was used to create the slides that we're going to sort of guide us through tonight. But as a reminder, you will be voting on the Mashpee Public Schools FY '23 budget on January 19th. And so there is still time, as we have journeyed together since September, to make any edits as a committee that you wish to moving forward. So first slide. Just to highlight some of what we think is why we are an outstanding school district. We really focus on learning experiences that prepare our students to be college, career, service, and civic ready. There are a lot of paths our students can take, and we want to make sure that we've prepared them with the knowledge and skills for the choices that they want to make. We honor diversity, we provide equity, and we are ensuring inclusion. That ties into our current plan for success. We have foundational pieces in place and many more additions to make as we move forward with our analysis. We live in a community that greatly values education. We have created a culture of excellence, kindness, and respect in our schools. We strongly focus on the whole child, not just the student that is in front of us. Our classes are taught by highly qualified teachers. We use a framework called MTSS, which is a multi-tiered system of supports, and that's designed to give every student what they need in varying degrees or intensity. We have multi-age learning opportunities. We definitely are not using our older students as often as we should as resources for our younger ones, but that is part of our plan moving forward. We have strong and productive community partnerships. We were recognized in 2021 with a Magna Award, which was recognizing us for the equity work we have done in partnership with the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe. And we also pride ourselves, unlike other districts, we do not charge our students fees for riding buses or for athletics or for many other of the small items that often can be difficult for families to handle. I need to minimize that little thing up there. Actually, Ashley, can you minimize on that one so that it doesn't cover? So the next one is just sort of the very 10,000-foot look at our FY23 budget, and it gives a little comparative data from FY22. Thank you. So the recommended budget for FY23 is $24,657,459. That represents a 3.01% increase over FY22. But we are also going to offset that total budget from our school choice program funds, and that is an offset of $654,198. So that the town of Mashpee appropriated budget would be $24,003,261. That represents a 3.02% increase from the prior year. But there is one other piece to take into account is we have 201,000 in technology capital requests that will go before the Capital Improvement Program Committee. And it's currently sitting in our operating budget, but would be pulled out if that funding is approved through capital. And so we do reflect that with an anticipation that that will be approved. Our FY23 total budget is $23,802,261, which is 2.16% increase over FY22. Part of what we do when we develop our budget is making sure that it is supporting our newly developed plan for success. That is our 4-year strategic plan that is shown on the next slide. There we go. I didn't include the entire plan for success, but it is in our narrative if you're looking for a little bit more detail. What I did include was the cover piece, the bigger piece picture. I do want to emphasize that the mission statement, and that this plan for success was developed with a large group of stakeholders, not just school personnel, but community members, students as well. And everything was looked at in terms of this new plan. The mission of the Mashpee Public Schools is to ensure a student-centered, comprehensive program of rigor, scope, and depth that prepares all students to be college, career, service, and civic ready, and teaches respect and acceptance of others. Our vision is that every student, every day, is safe, respected, and engaged to achieve academic and social growth in a personalized learning environment. The core values that we share: we value our students, staff, and community. Every decision we make is learner-driven to improve student outcomes. Our classroom instruction you know, I am negative for the virus. And I do have a cold. I'll do my best. Okay. Our classroom instruction and interventions are informed through observations and data-informed problem solving. Our district academic and behavioral protocols are implemented with fidelity. Our professional learning and collaboration improve educator practice by focusing on student learning and on teaching practices that are implemented with fidelity. We establish and sustain partnerships to ensure that all students are college, career, service, and civic ready. With our plan for success, our theory of action states, if we fully implement the 4 strategic objectives listed below, then every student every day is safe, respected, and engaged to achieve academic and social growth in a personalized learning environment. So our plan has 4 pillars of success. One is our portrait of a graduate, which you can see to the right of this. You can also click on the QR codes, which give you descriptors for each of our 5 competencies. These are the knowledge and skills that we are working on a K-12 focus to make sure our students have acquired. It's not just any one particular grade level's responsibility, it is cumulative. Our second pillar for success is diversity, equity, and inclusion. The third is teaching and learning, and the last one is Mashpee, a connected community. There are initiatives under each of these, but I'm just going to review. Each of them has one strategic objective. For the first portrait of a graduate pillar, it's to fully implement the portrait of a graduate. This was also developed with a large stakeholder group over a significant number of months to reach these agreed upon competencies that we want for our students. So what we're doing now is making sure that at every grade level, our teachers have identified how our students are able to demonstrate and what it looks like in first grade, what it looks like in 5th grade, what it looks like in 10th grade on up. For diversity, equity, and inclusion, the strategic objective is to honor that we will honor diversity, provide equity, and ensure inclusion throughout the Mashpee Public Schools. And like I said before, there are a lot of layers to this work, and we have a lot of growth to achieve in this area. But we have started down this path, and this is a 4-year plan, and so we have action steps in place for year 1. In the pillar teaching and learning, it is to fully align teaching and learning pre-K to 12 with our multi-tiered system of supports framework. This framework was put in place several years back, but as the pandemic interfered, as well as many new staff members, we felt that it was very important that this remains in the forefront of our work because it is our framework. And so a lot of actions will be taken this year and in future years to make sure that this is happening the way it's supposed to. The last one, Mashpee, a connected community, is to strengthen and grow positive and reciprocal relationships between the district and the community. And we have made inroads in that area, but we can always continue to grow and add to the partnerships. We have found such a benefit to our students from our partnerships with various businesses as well as organizations in Mashpee and beyond. So we're going to keep working at that. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to stop me. The next slide shows the timeline for the FY23 budget development. You can see that it starts in the spring of 21 for a budget that begins July 1 of 2023. So we do our very best to project as we move through this process, but there are and always remain unknowns, particularly in a school district's budget. But you can see the blue text at the bottom is what is to come yet. And so tonight is our public hearing on this budget. I want to emphasize that we build this budget basically from a 0 point. The teachers are the ones who start with just telling their principals what they want and need. The principals review those submissions with each team or with each department. They then create their school-based budget that then gets forwarded and sort of merged into a district budget. But then our director of finance, Ashley Lopes, myself, and the assistant superintendent, we sit with each principal individually and go line by line over what they have submitted. We ask for extra information where we think it's needed. They have backup for all of their items. And so that's the process that continues to go as we build the budget. Once it reaches sort of that review at a district level, it then does go to the finance working group, which is comprised of 2 members of the school committee. And so then they start to sort of review and analyze what's included in the budget, ask questions. We work from there, and then it eventually comes to the whole committee. I believe it was September-ish or October. Anyway, so then from September till January 19th, it's on every school committee agenda with opportunities to continue to question or tweak anything that's in the budget. And that has happened. It was in the Mashpee Enterprise on Christmas Eve, which is a requirement. And so tonight is the public hearing. Tomorrow night is a community preservation committee vote, which is related to a capital item that is shared between the DPW and the schools. As I said, the 19th is when the school committee will vote. On the 20th, we have to submit the school committee's FY23 budget to the town manager. In January, we may have the date, I'm not sure at this point. 24th. January 24th is the capital improvement program meeting where the school requests are discussed. And obviously we are also involved when DPW is sharing because many of their projects involve the schools. March 18th is when we are scheduled to present our FY23 budget to the Finance Committee. And then May 2nd is the annual town meeting, which is when the voters will vote on our budget. Any questions? Okay, one of the things we want to make sure everyone is aware of is that when we go into, or when we start the process of building our budget for any fiscal year, there are guidelines put in place that the school committee has generally determined in advance that they want us to make sure we abide by. So obviously we're always trying to strive to be fiscally responsible with any allocation of money from the voters of Mashpee. But our budget for FY23 ensures that all legal and contractual mandates will be met. It includes sufficient operating and capital funds to address, in this case, the second year of our plan for success implementation, to provide the current level of educational services to all Mashpee students, to move the district forward in meeting the increasing demands for technology in all educational settings, to update our curriculum where necessary, and it addresses the increasing social emotional needs of our students. And that sometimes is staffing and it can be programming as well. Also, part of the guidelines is the maintenance of a $250,000 floor in our school choice program funds. And then the last guideline or assumption is that ongoing practices and protocols to maintain facilities that are healthy and safe for our staff and students are funded through the DPW operating budget for FY23 and beyond. For example, the MERV 13 filters, hand sanitizer, sanitizing wipes, and disinfectant, because as we all know, our facilities fall under the Department of Public Works and the town of Mashpee, and therefore the maintenance of all of our buildings is not within the school's operating budget or the control of the school. Any questions? The next slide shows our revenue sources for FY23. It does provide a comparative for FY22. You'll notice that the total grants is quite a bit lower for FY23. And down below, you will see that that is related to some of the COVID funding. So grant funding will remain at the same level as FY20 or decrease. FY21 and 22 includes the one-time grant funding for COVID-19. So we received $510,142 and $1,628,023 respectively. You see the school choice program funds for each of those years being allocated to our budget. So the town of Mashpee allocation is shown, and then the Chapter 78 is listed. That's remaining, we've been told, pretty static, so we have the same amount. Do you want to add anything?
Excuse me, the FY23 charter sheets have not come out yet, so we don't have the Chapter 70 number. We're making the assumption it will be level funded.
The next slide shows our personnel budget. Obviously the bulk of our Mashpee Public Schools budget, generally around the 19%, 20% range, is personnel. And it's broken down here. You can see FY22 and FY23, the dollar change as well as the percent change. We've highlighted anything that was a swing of more than 5% in either direction. So for Mashpee High School, it's a 5.06% increase. And if you look down below, it included in that number is the addition of a science teacher for the new computer science program that is being started next year, as well as the health services program that was put on hold during the pandemic, but we were able to get a grant. So we have all of the materials and I don't know if it's hardware, but we have everything to provide students with the opportunity to gain some industry licensure for the health field when they graduate from Mashpee Middle High School. That's also an example of a great partnership with some health affiliates around the Cape that are going to be supporting that program. And it also allows the equipment that we have allows for some evening programming that may be something the fire department or other medical places will take advantage of. So that increase represents an additional teacher there. And then curriculum and technology has a 22.24% increase. A small piece of that is the addition of an English language education teacher. And that is due to the increase in English learners. And I believe a couple school committee meetings ago, Dr. Hanscom did a pretty thorough explanation and of the ELE program and what we have seen in terms of numbers. One of the big areas is if you're a level 1 learner, that means that you really don't speak English. And so you have a long way to go. But when we have level 1 students come in at the high school, that's particularly challenging. Prior to this year, we generally would not have a level 1, but we have several right now. So I think that's a trend you're going to see continuing, where there are more students who have challenges with English. Any other questions on that page? I believe also in curriculum and technology, which maybe Ashley, you can confirm, includes the technology. It does include the 201,000 in technology that hopefully is going to be funded through CIP. Yes. Oh yeah, that's on the operations side. On the next page, that's the operating side of the budget, which is the smaller component of our budget, generally around the 19%. I don't know if I said the last personnel part right, where I said it was about 80% generally. 80 to 81% of our budget is personnel, and the rest is this operational piece. So you see FY22, FY23, and then the dollar change and the percent change. Again, we tried to look at where there was a swing of more than 5%, which is actually more detailed in the narrative. So let me just look there. I'm hearing a lot of rain out there. So the Quashnet School, which was a 5.06%, that reflects some planned purchases of classroom consumables and supplies. The Mashpee Middle High School is a decrease of 6.85%. That reflection is due to off-cycle textbook replacement. The Mashpee High School increase of 27.81. That increase reflects the health services pathway and expenses related to outdoor graduation. For the technology line, that is where the additional 201,000 is housed, that hopefully is going to land in the CIP program. It includes, so technology includes 895,000 roughly of proposed expenses. Offset in that line is our 654,198 from school choice. And then the 201,000 is for the capital. The net increase is 39,960, which is primarily for subscription services and contractual obligations. Transportation has an 11.74% increase, and that is due to driver wage increases, the replacement of a bus, and special education transportation. I didn't talk about the minus 10.73% in out-of-district tuitions. That is very, it's somewhat difficult to predict in the sense that most of the out-of-district locations do have some sort of an increase. And then also the student population, we can predict when students age out. We cannot predict when students move into the district and sometimes have an out-of-district requirement on their IEP. And under the other, that 11.61% increase is in contractual obligations for internet service. So you can see that the total operating side of our budget for FY23 at the bottom of that chart is 4,539,427, which represents 3.9% of an increase. I don't think I hit on the total. I just went back for a minute. The total personnel budget for FY '23 is $19,262,834, which is a 1.76% increase over the personnel budget of FY '22. The next slide is our historical budget. And so you can see the past 4 years going into FY '23 as the 5th year for our budget and the increase, the percent increase over the prior year. And as we've said, or I've said, I think so far in this presentation, I'm going to read that bottom. At this time, we are requesting $24,003,261 be appropriated by the town of Mashpee for the Mashpee Public Schools FY '23 budget. This amount, a 3.02% increase over last year's appropriation, incorporates an offset of $654,198 from school choice program funds and includes $201,000 in FY '23 technology capital requests. If the town of Mashpee approves the technology capital requests, $201,000 will be removed from the operating budget, reducing the FY 2023 requested appropriation to $23,802,261, which is a 2.16% increase over last year's appropriation.
Patty,
Yes.
Let me ask a question. So on that previous slide.
Yeah.
Were those numbers for the previous years absent capital? Or was that the total budget with our capital included?
It's absent capital because our final budget was reduced by the capital amount that was approved by CIP.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
If you want to look apples to apples, you look at the red number down below and that 2.16% increase year over year.
Okay, thank you. Did everybody hear that?
Yes.
Thanks.
The next slide, which is also taken from our budget narrative, just shows sort of a historical journey of the rate of budget growth. So you have the blue columns, which are actual expenditures, and the orange line is the percent growth budget. The next slide is our district enrollment, and for FY '23, we're projecting 1,485 students. That's pretty sort of a static number from what we have for FY '22 of 1,480. We continue to see movement of families who have a hard time finding a place to live in Mashpee. And we really do hope that as a community, we're able to problem solve around that, because you know, the wealth of a community to me is measured by the families and children that are part of it. And we hope that our families are able to stay in Mashpee. So the school choice program does give some options there. Often when we see decreases in enrollment, there is an automatic thought of a budget savings, and sometimes there is. This year we did reduce kindergarten by 1 teacher, but often other times it's a spread out sort of decline, and it doesn't quite equate into a reduction in staff. It takes a couple of years to hit that point. So, but for FY '23, we are projecting a stable student population. This next slide shows the FY '23 personnel budget, comparing all the past years. So we have it broken down by schools. You will notice FY '22, there's 136, those are full-time equivalent teachers. That was as of October 1 of '21. We are projecting for FY '23, 138 positions. And as you recall, I spoke about adding a science teacher at the middle high school and the ELE teacher at the sort of district-wide, but primarily high school. not included in our budget narrative, but included as these slides is just a little recap of our capital improvement program. So our school requests for FY23, we have the 5 bulleted items there. So we have $45,000 for Chromebook leases, $25,000 for interactive board systems, $25,400 for iPad replacement, and $105,600 for Pilot X interactive, I'm going to say podiums. Those 4 items together total the $201,000 we've referenced a few times as the items that we're taking to CIP for funding. And then the $25,000 in food service, kitchen upgrade, equipment upgrades has been ongoing for a couple of years. And that's just to, bring some of our kitchens in, where they have equipment that is, in the case of the high school, that was built in opened in 96. So some of the items are original and need replacement. So that is in there. When we do present at the capital improvement committee, Sean Maroney, our technology director, he will be there as well to explain a little bit more detail about the technology requests. We also did provide backup when we submitted these requests. In the capital improvement program, as I discussed, our school buildings fall under the DPW in the town of Mashpee per the charter. And so part of what the DPW has requested through CIP that are school specific are shown on this slide. There's flooring replacement. That's generally on every year. Gym upgrades at the middle high school. Quashnet vestibule was something that was promised by the town when we moved the voting from Christ the King back to the Quashnet School. It was designed to be a permanent structure that would allow entry and exit off of the gymnasium so that there would be no interference with a school day when there was voting. Quashnet gymnasium upgrades have been something that we have requested in multiple years as well. That floor is original to this school in 78. There have been student injuries there. So we're looking to sort of refresh that. And that is also a very highly used facility by our community members as well. Different recreational groups use it, pickleball, all of those people. And then HVAC upgrades throughout the district are also part of the DPW capital request. And then this item, which is also part of the DPW's capital, we have a proposed Mashpee Middle High School multi-purpose stadium field and track renovation project. It was presented to the Community Preservation Committee on December 2nd. Portions of this project do qualify and meet the requirements for funding through that source. And so the total projected cost of this project is $2,970,350. There are contingencies built in that so that hopefully that is the highest it's going to be, and we're hoping it would be lower. $1,709,400 has been requested for funding from the Community Preservation Committee. And like I said, that committee is reviewing all the submitted proposals again tomorrow night, and I believe making the vote to recommend forward. We're hoping that this project does make it to Mashpee town meetings so that the voters in the town have an opportunity to weigh in on this and make their choice. So the balance of the project, $1,260,950, is a request that is going through the capital improvement program. And that amount is mostly specific to the turf field, which is not something that's eligible through community preservation funds. So the upgrades included in this project is the new 6-lane track. The track is basically the original track. It did have a resurface sometime during its past 25 years, but the consultants that have come in said that that's not doable and it really is becoming unsafe. So that is also something significantly used by community members. So the project includes a total redo of that track, the synthetic turf stadium field, so we will no longer have the grass field there. The lighting that's currently in the stadium is being converted to LED stadium lights. And then it includes improved walkways, access and fencing. So right now, when people who are visitors come to attend a game, they basically walk on the track to get over to where their bleacher area is. And that's not something that's going to help maintain the life of our track. So this project includes sort of much better access as well. It also includes a hydration station. There will be water piping that goes to the Fuller House to allow the boosters to potentially add sink or water usage there. And then also the hydration station for athletes and visitors to use as well. We are at the 90% phase of completion in terms of planning for this project. We've been working with Gale Associates. They're pretty expert at this work. They have several projects going. The idea or the hope is that the Community Preservation Committee will approve this request, their share, or that what we're requesting, that the CIP committee will also approve, and that it would go to town meeting and be part of the special town meeting. And that my understanding from town officials is that the $1,260,000 would not be an outside debt. They would be able to fund that through in an in-house way. And if this item is on the special town meeting and gets approved, basically on the day after graduation in June, we would be able to start the project. They anticipate, because we were going to put out proposals, the bid proposals in February, that it's basically would be shovel ready around June 5th and would be complete for the start of the fall season. So that is the goal we are hoping for. And that is it for my presentation for the FY23 budget. I will welcome any questions that you might have. And did I take my 30 minutes? I don't know.
You did perfect. Thank you. So are there any questions from the committee? We've been through this a number of times, so maybe there aren't.
Madam Chair, I sent some questions to the finance director, and I'm waiting to hear back from her. And those will be published once those are reviewed.
Hey, I'm
Okay.
sorry, Dawn, can you speak into your microphone? I couldn't hear you.
Yeah.
I sent several questions to the finance director regarding the budget, and waiting to hear back response for those. And those will be shared with the committee once they're available.
Ashley, can you say anything about those, or
I can, I did follow the John, let you know I would get back to them.
can you pull your mic in? That with the air running, it's really hard to hear you.
Sure. The first question Dawn asked me was about the transportation line item, and if it was originally, our original replacement schedules for 2 buses. Actually, we are done with our replacement schedule, so we didn't need to do any buses this year, but because in FY21, we only purchased 2 buses, we still need to purchase 1 to fulfill that schedule. So our current budget has 1 replacement bus. When I initially did do the budget, it was for 2. However, with the changes to the wages that increased that contractual obligation, I did not make a change to reduce the transportation line at this time.
Okay. Were there other questions?
Yes, I didn't know if Dawn had a follow-up.
Okay.
Well, so I have a follow-up on that. So what was the time period for the original replacement schedule?
It was to end in FY22.
Right, but how many, we have, I believe, what, 16 full-size buses,
Yes,
and we were replacing, what, 2 every year?
3 a year.
3 every year. So basically over, let's call it 5 years.
Correct.
Okay, and so do we have a new replacement schedule
We have,
for
oh, go ahead.
going forward?
We have not started a new replacement schedule yet. That is due to the conversations that we were having with electric buses and also the solar that canopy that's going to be put in at MMHS. So I think that's a bigger conversation to start having for FY '24 and beyond.
Okay.
And then the next question was, what was the cost for a Wampanoag language teacher? And was this included in the proposed budget? No, that is not included in the proposed budget at this time. And we do not currently carry a cost for that teacher. So I did not spec it out at this point.
Yeah, the current grant covers the 22-23 school year. But we need to have that conversation for subsequent year
So it's covered for FY '22 and 23?
through a grant by the Wampanoag Language Reclamation Project.
So it's covered for 23. Okay.
For the next, yeah, for this budget year, we have a teacher that's paid for. But
Well, for this year,
For FY
this-
'23.
the 23 budget, yeah,
for the 23
Yeah.
budget, we have it covered.
yes.
Okay. That was my question. Okay.
Okay, was there anything else?
Sure, I have some questions, I guess. In regards to the grants, who on our side in the administration helps with those? I think Hope does some of them, or does Ashley do some too, or?
I can speak to that. So it's a group of us. Hope she ranks for the title grants. So that's Title I, 2A, and Title IV. She also goes out for the competitive grants that we've had in the past. Jamie Curley, the Director of Special Education, does the special education grants, and there are 2 of them primarily each year. Some years there are more. For instance, this year we have 5 of them that she has written grants for. I typically manage the money process of them. I don't necessarily write for them. However, if there's a grant that comes in, let's say, for instance, Mike Looney has written a grant over the summer, and that needs to be processed into the system with the state, I do that processing.
Okay, the only reason why I was asking is because it seems like in 2022, we got a significant amount in grants, and then that's not the case in 2023, and I just didn't know why. With a lot of this funding and packaging and things that are going out from the Biden administration, I think that there's a lot of funding out there for infrastructure and a lot of these things that are on our list. And I just think that we should, if we don't have somebody dedicated to that, I think that that's something that we should look at, because it will be a return on our investment, I think, down the long road.
So we're not eligible for any grants right now. We've applied for all of the grants that are there for us. So for instance, in FY '22, that large item, or that large grant number, the 2 million, includes the 1.5 million approximately that we received in ESSER 3 funding, which was the funding that came out when Biden came in the beginning of FY '21. So that grant is actually open for 3 years. We haven't actually received our approval yet for the state to use those funds, and we're in the process of that. So when the administration does send out grants, like when they did the ESSER money for what they're calling ARPA, when ARPA passed, we got our allotment of 1.5. And then as a team, Patty, Hope, and I sat down and with, how we did the survey earlier this year about our priorities. And then we wrote that grant based on those priorities and submitted it to the state. So once that funding trickles down, it goes from the federal level, and then the state will decide how they want to have the local entities apply for it, and then we will apply for it once we get our allocation.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense as to why
Yeah,
we received a lot.
exactly.
2022. Okay. And the other thing was with personnel, the budget. I was a little concerned about the special education and us taking, it's not so much of a percentage, but I think when we're asking for more money with curriculum and technology and stuff, and the fact that we're asking for money that we think that would come back to us if it's approved, rather than give it back, I think that we should look at. I don't know about special education, but that's just something I think that we shouldn't really touch the budget, and we should be looking at ways to fund them, not take away funding when it comes to
So I could speak to that if it helps, Brian. It's not a reduction in services in special education, but we have had turnover over the last few years. So it is a reflection of the current pay. So we had people leaving at top step, and when we hire, we don't hire at that top step. So it's just a savings in personnel. It's not a cut in services.
Okay, thank you.
Matt, any questions?
No, it seems like everything's been kind of covered through.
Kathy?
I'm all set, thank you.
The,
Don?
the one last question that I posed to Hope was, or not to Hope, to Ashley, was in regard to school lunches. So currently, school lunches are free to all students in Mashpee. That program currently is scheduled to end, I believe, at the end of this year. And the question was, what would that cost to maintain that for next year? Knowing that there is some potential legislation in front of the Massachusetts legislature that would mandate that with funding to come from the federal government and the rest, assuming it's funded, to come from the Department of Education. And I'm not sure, Ashley, if you have that information at this point.
So I'm in the process of doing that analysis that you requested. However, just speaking in broad strokes, currently we're receiving reimbursement at the free level from the federal government. So that's a key factor in the revenue we're receiving for all of our students for food service this year. If that goes away, then we wouldn't be receiving the same reimbursement for non-eligible students if we make the program 100% free. So meaning there's different tiers, there's the paid lunch, there's the reduced lunch, and then free lunch, and we get reimbursement based on those numbers. And it's a different allocation in a typical year. Currently, we're receiving the free amount from the federal government reimbursement. So those are a few of the things that I need to look into to do a projection and analysis.
All right. You anticipate having that information by the next meeting?
Sure.
Thank you.
I have not missed having to set the lunch prices, have you?
No. but-
Yeah. I wish they would just keep paying for us.
Well, that
lunches.
legislation gets to vote, I mean,
Yeah.
following that too, Don, and it's been a very interesting thing to watch,
Yeah,
so.
My concern with it is that the legislature has been known to do unfunded mandates. And I can see this just being another unfunded one. That is nice.
Hence
in
why it's been
theory.
interesting to watch.
So that's really why I want to know what's the whole, what would it cost for Mashpee to continue that? Because we do have, I recall, 40-some% of our students on free or reduced lunches currently. So almost half.
yeah. The budget assumes what with regard to our lunch program?
It only assumes the food service director in the operational budget. We have a separate revolving account for food service, and that's where all those expenses are charged to.
So, right. So basically, we would have to take the money out of the school budget to put into the revolving account to fund the difference.
If we decided to make it free.
If-
Yeah,
if we
if
did
it-
that.
if the
Yeah,
legislature
if
passes.
we did that.
Well, I think when you separately, when you do that analysis, I would love to know what our lunches are, what our numbers are with the free lunch program, whether they've actually increased or remained about the same. I know in the Bartlett household, nobody cares if lunches are free. They still have to carry their lunch to school apparently. So I was hoping my child would be enticed by the opportunity to save me some money and time, but she was not. So, okay, any other questions on the budget? So I guess all there is to do now then is to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing on the FY '23 budget.
Okay, Don makes a motion.
I'll second.
Kathy seconds. Any final discussion? All right, Kathy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Thanks, Patty. That was a great presentation. I really appreciated having the slides too. So next item on the agenda is a look at the superintendent's mid-cycle update on her current school year goals.
Yes, so in your packet, you have, our plan for success, which is all of our district goals, from teachers to administrators to district leaders to school committee members, are tied to our plan for success. And in the packet on page 19 and 20, the highlighted in yellow are the areas that we are focusing on this year, because remember, it's a 4-year plan. And then what I have is specific to my goals, which actually it's a little hard to see up there. I have a district improvement goal, student learning goal, and a professional practice goal. And then in December, I added 2 additional. They're not probably worded exactly as smart as they should be, but they are on here as well. So I'll just go over the first district improvement goal. Is during school year 21-22, in collaboration with district and school leaders, I will monitor, evaluate, and support year 1 of the implementation of the Mashpee Public Schools Plan for Success. I will oversee the strategic initiatives listed below, and then I've referenced what they're connected to, and also to the superintendent evaluation rubric. Those are the standards there. So identify grade level expectations for each portrait of a graduate competency. In the left, on the right is an update on where we're at so far. So I talked about how this is a continuum from K to 12, actually pre-K to 12. And so we have had teacher teams and department groups working on the first competency, which is purposeful communicator and collaborator. And there is a linked spreadsheet there to a couple of examples of that work. They are going to be working on that again next Monday. The December half day, you know, we have to acknowledge that, well, I will acknowledge that we are, you know, still struggling with this pandemic. And as our students are not sort of their best selves, our teachers are still struggling on many levels, not only in their teacher version of themselves, but personally with colleagues. There's just a lot going on. And so I know in December, we did have Dr. Khalees Warnham on our half day. And the balance of that day, rather than have them continuing to work on their portrait of a graduate, was used for activities of their choice. So we have sort of slowed the expected pace of the completion of this work. We wanted to have initiative 1.1 completed by June of 2022. I do expect that we'll make significant progress, but we will not have all 5 competencies completed. What has been done so far has been reviewed by principals, and when that's considered to meet the expectation, then a grade level team or department is going to move on to their second competency. So that's where we're at with that. We are using our half days. The second initiative there, analyze and expand district-wide systems to ensure students, especially those from historically marginalized groups, can access the entire scope of opportunities. And so this is preliminary stages of this very in-depth work that we need to accomplish. But part of it is really what I've done so far is I've questioned many activities or events or programs to really say to the teacher or to the principal, how do you know that every student that wants to access that is able to? And are there transportation barriers? All using that lens of really making sure we do much more than just assume because a student didn't return paperwork to be in a club or an honor society that they're not interested, that we have to be more personalized and find out the why and problem solve if there is a problem that they need help with. So there's a lot of layers to that. One of the examples too I wrote here was the AM basketball. The coach wanted to run this 7 to 8, extra opportunity for the players. And I wouldn't let him do it unless he could guarantee me that every one of the players was able to attend. Because even if some said they didn't, they do, because they don't want to be left behind in sort of developing their skills or be viewed as not the same as the other players. So I think it actually involved where one other player was going to pick up a student and the coach himself was picking up a student. We're currently on hold, but that's what the plan was for that activity. Third initiative, 2.6, is provide training to ensure a district-wide culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I did mention Dr. Khalees Warnham. We are working on additional resources for our staff for the March PD Day as well, to slowly sort of work on their own reflection of their biases. When Dr. Khalees Warnham was here, she really did a great job we were all together, spaced 6 feet apart in the gymnasium. And she's just such a thoughtful presenter of making everybody reflect on their past experiences with students or their role as a teacher and how they could have handled a situation differently. And so we'll continue to work with that. 3.1, which is focused on the teaching and learning pillar. Renew our MTSS framework with all staff and ensure implementation thereof with fidelity. So far I have done this at all 3 staff meetings on those dates. I will say that we just had a staff meeting for January, which part of the plan was I was going to take 20 minutes to do my MTSS focused piece. But again, being, not with our head in the sand, recognizing what was going on around us, we changed that to 20 minutes with our COVID-19 district health coordinator to present sort of the changes that took place over the break, and also to allow for question and answers with staff, because they came back after having to try to get their test kit and their masks, and so there's just an elevated level of worry right now, and it doesn't make sense to pile on something when their minds are really focused on something else. Provide relevant staff professional development. This is again related to MTSS. There's not been anything on that. And then create, implement, and maintain an integrated website to increase accessibility for all users. We did switch hosts for our website and totally revamped it. Final Site is the company that helped us do that. I will say these past few days, their site is down for some reason. So every website they host has not been up. But that is not a problem on our end. That's on their end. And I believe that they are making progress. Any questions on that sort of district piece? The next one is my student learning goal. For school year 21-22, in collaboration with district and school leaders, I will support teachers and administrators in the application of Mashpee's MTSS framework to improve social, emotional, and academic outcomes for our students, but they're all mine, as evidenced by data collected. So there are 3 things there that I'm doing. Providing professional development on MTSS to all of our employees. Again, those are the 2 staff meetings so far. There are a slide presentation that can be shared with you. I will, in collaboration with building administrators, ensure that the MTSS problem-solving protocol is being used with fidelity to monitor student progress. So at every one of our buildings, we have what we call pulse teams, which is proactive update of learners and the school environment. That group of individuals, it's a mixture, is looking at specific challenges that a student is facing or a group of students is facing. And then we have a protocol that we use, and that's consistent in all 3 buildings, to make sure that we are sort of wondering about the reasons why, and then doing some investigations to confirm if our hypotheses are right and to take some steps to improve things. The Quashnet School this year also has an MTSS learning block, which I give huge kudos to Principal O'Brien for that work, because she leads those groups And it is really allowing sort of a higher level growth in this particular school. I'd like to see it at all the other two schools. And then I'm also involved with monitoring grade level and departmental PLCs, where this work is also discussed, and the department heads and the curriculum leaders at the elementary level are doing sort of the same work of making sure teachers have the knowledge and skills that they need to successfully follow the framework. And then planning, I will plan and advocate for funding to ensure that the MTSS framework is fully implemented so that students can achieve learning, social, emotional, and behavioral goals. And so that's all built into the many layers of the FY23 budget that starts with at the teacher level on up, and its programming and personnel. And the last goal is to work collaboratively with teachers and administrators to identify and document the grade level expectations for the Portrait of a Graduate. So we've talked about that already. That is primarily the work of our half days, although I will say that the Mashpee Middle High School is working with the Anti-Defamation League. So there's been a few interruptions there as those teachers receive the training that they need for that program. But the goal is that we are working on those at the half days. And let's see, the time to do that work. And then again, collaborating with the building leaders to make sure that the grade level expectations are really representative of what they are doing at these grade levels to ensure that the students are going to achieve or gain those skills and knowledge. It's kind of looking at, by the end of the year, what does it look like when for a second grader to be a collaborative problem solver? I see it when I go into classrooms. So it's just making sure that in every classroom, opportunities are given and teachers are having the chance to observe and assess that a student is where they should be at the end of second grade. And that there's also that cohesive approach among a grade level. So it shouldn't matter which classroom that you're in. You should, come out of second grade, come out of 10th grade with a similar experience. And then the two that were added in December is facilitate, engage in a successful search and hiring process for the next Mashpee Middle High School principal that incorporates stakeholder voices, including students, staff, families, and the community. And this is to be completed by June 30th, 2022, with a new principal to begin on July 1, 2022. And then the second one is to continue to strategically navigate and manage the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the Mashpee Public Schools, students, staff, and operations, with an ongoing focus on student learning and the health and wellness of our students and staff. I know that this document was sent out to the two school committee members who serve on the superintendent evaluation subcommittee. I did not receive any feedback prior to this meeting on those papers. Anybody have any questions?
Patty, I was just going to say that, as we were going through kind of your goals, I think what was, going through this document,
Yes.
and relating that to your goals, I think as I'm listening to it, I'm like, where's the bit about getting us through COVID? Because
Right.
it's certainly a big part of what we're doing, especially this week. So I was kind of glad to see that addition. And I'm pleased that you found a way to include that in your, evaluation criteria. So thank you. Any other comments or questions from the committee?
I believe I come back in April. It's in an April meeting. I have to look at the year-long agenda, but I believe it's April that I present sort of where we're at that point. Might be early May, but I'm not sure.
I hope between now and then we'll, I'm really curious about this Portrait of a Graduate, the grade level competencies, and it would be fun to kind of hear from some teachers about how they created those. And obviously it's still a work in progress right now, but I think it would be useful for the public too, to understand how that's done for 10th grade versus, 4th, for example.
Well, we've talked about, so the longer term is that we want our portrait of a graduate competencies reflected on the elementary report cards. We want our middle high school students to create their Google site, which we have their electronic portfolio. And what you would have is, and anyone who's familiar with the Google site, you'd have a page either, and it could be set up consistently, but it would either be by competency or by grade level. And the students themselves, their voice shows through where they're putting submissions of work that they say, this shows that I'm a, collaborative problem solver. And so it's building that portfolio in electronically that would allow students to sort of really monitor their own growth, which is really important for us. Particularly, I think from grades 3 on up, they can definitely monitor their achievement and growth of our portrait of graduate competencies.
Looking forward to seeing how that works. Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Patty.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is the update on the MMHS multi-use artificial turf stadium project. Superintendent hit on, frankly, the latest information in her presentation. But the one item that we have for tonight is adopting this letter of support that you guys all have in front of you, and you had the opportunity to review.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I believe you skipped over item 7.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh darn it, Dawn. I'm so screwed up tonight. Okay, you're right. I apologize. So the school committee has adopted 4 goals. Well, 1 goal with 4 action steps. And so we have during the school year 21-22, the school committee will monitor, evaluate, and support the implementation of the Mashpee Public Schools Plan for Success, of which we spent a lot of time this evening discussing. And so with those action steps, we have on page 24 of your packet are sort of a data collection sheet, sort of identifying ways that we can help track our progress on this. And then page 25 of the packet is the self-evaluation worksheet that you all have access to. I haven't seen a ton of contributions by the members, so this is kind of a heads up to you to start to think about, whether there are some learning opportunities that you want to do for action step 2, or some things Sherry has been sending around, some district activities that we can participate in, and that's going to keep coming. That was one of the things when Brian and I met in the subcommittee, we thought it would be helpful to start to make sure that you guys are aware of opportunities that are there. It's a little tricky right now with COVID, but I really enjoyed watching the basketball team play from my living room the other night. So that live feed for all of our athletics is pretty cool. You don't necessarily have to go to the gym to be able to do that. And then also thinking about connections to the schools with things like the Mashpee Youth Commission, and some of our other activities related to amplifying student voice. So I'm going to pause there and see if there's any comments, questions, contributions. Okay. We good to move on? All right. So next, letter of support for the stadium project. You have in front of you a final draft. Patty, if you had sent edits to Patty, some of them were incorporated. Don, you had asked specifically about this third paragraph. And that was put in specifically to address some of the questions that came during the CPC presentation, particularly about the shock pad, and then subsequent conversations after the Martha's Vineyard discussions about the so-called forever chemicals, the PFAS. So we wanted to make sure that, and also the infill components, which are not going to be chrome rubber. So there was some question about student safety and making sure that student health and safety were included, which is, I think, under our purview. And so that's why I included that in there. The other suggestions that you made were incorporated. Does anyone have any additional questions or changes to this to suggest?
No, I appreciated that third paragraph actually, because that I think is important to put out there.
Okay, great. Okay, with that, I move that we approve this letter of support for the MMHS multi-use artificial turf stadium project. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Kathy. Is there any discussion? So only add that this was, we were asked by CPC whether we had letters of support. So our vote, while unanimous and in support, was we wanted to add a letter just to give the committee a little bit more to consider. And you guys also have a copy of the letter that I think this was just shared with us today, but this is from the district leadership team of Patty, Hope, and Ashley. Okay.
The last sentence, should it say portable? Or is it?
No, potable is drinkable.
All right.
Yeah.
There is also a letter that the boosters, so we presented the project to the Boosters Club on Monday night. It was Ashley and myself and Catherine Laurent, DPW director, and answered any questions that they had, explained pretty much what we've talked about tonight. And they submitted a letter to Catherine. Most of the letters are going to Catherine because she's sort of the lead on the project. She submitted it to CPC. Southport Falcons are also submitting a letter, and I believe according to the boosters, there was a student petition that was signed. I don't know, I haven't seen it, but that was being submitted as well. So that Catherine can make sure that the committee members have all of the letters before the meeting. I do know that tonight's planning board meeting, that's why Ashley left our meeting, that they are going to be discussing this project at the planning board. My understanding is that Mary Wagon, who's the representative from CPC on the planning board, wants the planning board vote to guide her vote on CPC, and I'm not sure. I just wonder how many other projects in the past that have gone to CPC that involve land or buildings have had the requirement of going before the planning board prior to CPC. But that is where Ashley is, because it's around 7 o'clock that they were going to be discussing that project.
Is that meeting virtual?
Tonight's is not, because it was already on the schedule as in person.
Okay. I thought that had already happened and was dispensed with. So,
I don't know. Well, that's what I've been led to understand for
Yeah.
tonight.
okay. Thanks for that update. So I think if there's no more discussion, we can take a vote. Kathy,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
I vote yes as well. So that's unanimous. Thank you. Catherine or Patty will make sure that that gets to Catherine and
Send
Kathy.
it to
for
her
this.
tonight.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, next, Patty, an update on the interim MMHS principal search.
Okay, so based on the school committee decision on the 21st of December, we did post, we have an updated job description of the Mashpee Middle High School principal. The current one was quite old and outdated, so we updated that. And then we also labeled it similarly as an interim, same requirements, basically. We posted that on School Spring, and we also sent it to MASS, and they shared it on their listserv of retired superintendents. Through today, we've had 8 applicants. We are currently in the interview process. The first interview, there will be more than one in terms of a candidate's consideration. And then depending on what the situation is for the candidate, we don't know for sure when that person would be brought on, but we would be hopeful sooner than later.
Are you and Hope continuing to assume the duties of the interim principal in that in-between period?
Yeah, so from December 1st, probably through at least February 1st. I don't know when, it could be March 1st. It depends. The situation with some candidates is they're in a current position. And so there would be a need to respect whatever exit plan was needed from that situation.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Okay, it looks like no. Are there any other items?
I would appreciate an update from the superintendent regarding COVID-19. Particularly, I saw the email that went out regarding athletics at the middle high school. If you could share some color to the committee, I would appreciate it.
Okay, so I definitely think I heard that you want to know about COVID. So I did put on your table the most up-to-date data dashboard, which was from 2 o'clock today. You can see that we're only on January, what is this, the 5th? And we've had 59 students test positive or show up as positives. That's huge. We've also had 5 staff members. I will say that over the weekend, when we distributed the test kit and the masks, by Sunday night, we had distributed 156 individuals. And none of those, they were supposed to report a positive. They're supposed to take the test within 24 hours of returning to school Monday and report a positive case to our district coordinator. So as of Sunday night, no one of the 156 had tested positive. Now, they weren't required to test. I will say this is all optional, but most did, I believe. And so then we did open the superintendent's office at 6:30. 2 workers came in to allow all who could not come on the weekend to pick up the materials prior to the start of their workday. Granted, on Mondays, we start work an hour early because of staff meetings, but 6:30 allowed any middle high school person to come and get theirs. And I know that another 50 to 60 picked up on that day. One person who came to pick up their kit, who was not feeling well, did test positive, but that allowed that person not to enter the building. But I want to remind everyone who's watching or who will watch this when we post it, that we do not want anyone with symptoms, staff or students, coming to school. And yes, like you can hear, I have a cold. I have taken 2 different tests. Not everything is COVID, but we want to just make sure, at least at this point, given that there's this surge. So we continue to really monitor. Now, you'll notice on this form from today that as of today, we're not going to include any close contacts on this sheet because it's become an enormous, almost unmanageable task with the resources we have available. We're not alone. That's across every school district, because it's the contact tracing that takes hours for one particular positive. And it's not that we can't locate the names, but there's a lot of phone calls. It's just so hard. And if I were waiting for each case to have it be fully contact traced, this would not be up to date in a timely manner. So we just made the decision based on the current surge that we're halting that data on this chart. On the back of the chart, you can flip it over. It's just the actual cases from August through December. And it's by, obviously by month and by school. You'll see the students and you see the staff. And so obviously December, we can see was definitely going up. You can see the same data on the front of the chart as well. It's just more graphic. And like I said, we have had all of our staff members, though, so far who have ended up being positive were not from in-school contact. There's just a lot going on in our families. There's siblings, there's children. And so it affects often they get it. And I will say, fully vaccinated, with a booster is not saying you're not going to get it, because we have staff members in that situation who have tested positive. I don't believe they're sort of overly sick, but it's still a positive. By the January 19th meeting, the December data down below for the health office will be added, because that's our regular meeting for January. Stacy was very conscious of that not being there, and I said I would explain to Mr. Myers that it's coming on the 19th.
Quick question, how are we looking on substitutes?
Well, Ashley actually just interviewed 3 new substitutes today that came on board. Coming on board doesn't necessarily mean they come to work, but they are interested.
Yep.
We do have quite a few students that are college kids, college age, that have sort of helped fill some gaps at the high school. It's not ideal. We definitely do not have the coverage that we like, but we are able to manage staff absences generally. So we have, I think today we had 31 absences, but we have several who are out long-term on other reasons. We have a couple of maternities, things like that. So it's not, it didn't strike me as being, alarming, because every day I look at that every morning and it's always in the 20s to 30s, Mondays and Fridays are particularly high, but we definitely want to make sure we support our staff members and their families. And currently there's the federal 40 hours. I think it goes through April of 2022. So anything COVID related, whether you have to stay home because your child is sick, whether you had a reaction to your booster, all of those scenarios allow an employee to remain out without using their own sick leave up to 40 hours. Obviously, if it's an MPS reason that you're out because of a close contact or whatever, you never get charged your own sick leave for that. So we monitor that. And so most members so far have not had to use their own sick leave. Some are getting very close to exceeding the 40 hours.
Thank you.
So in regard to the pause that was implemented on athletics at
Right.
the middle high school, is Mashpee unique, or is that
Well, no,
something else taking place at this within the South Shore League?
yeah, so Monomoy is just coming off of a 1-week pause, so that makes it a little complicated for our co-op hockey team. So they haven't been playing this week. Now technically Monomoy could go back, but now we're on a pause. So that particular team, our kids have to honor what our, what's happening in our world. It just was based on our district health coordinator seeing the number of players that were coming out positive, and a whole team is considered close contacts with sports. They're all considered 0 to 3. So it just becomes, it's really overwhelming. So we just kind of wanted to take a pause and hopefully get things a little bit more settled in terms of the rampant spread. We probably, when we bring it back, may limit attendance to just family members, not students. Not that students aren't doing, everything when they're not with us, with each other, but I think across the South Shore League today, I think it was today, the athletic directors sort of reached an agreement that they were going to move forward with that for a period of time where it would only be families allowed to go to the basketball games, which, like Nicole said, with the huddle camera, you can watch the games from your house under a blanket. So it's good.
Well, that would certainly be disappointing, I think, if we had to limit student attendance at those events. I'll just put in a plug to say that our students are probably the most cognizant of COVID protocols, the most compliant, since they do them every day. When I did attend a basketball game on Monday, it was a few parents in the stands with their masks down at their chins, not really obeying the district protocols, whereas all the students were still wearing their masks because they wear them for school and sports and everything. So
Yeah.
I'd hate to see those after-school activities limited. It's been great for kids to have that social interaction and support of each other. So I totally understand why something like that might need to happen, but I would just offer that. The question I had about these close contacts is, I'm worried that if you stop tallying them,
Well, we're not stopping. We have a spreadsheet that currently has about 400 students being monitored in various levels. So Stacy has a handle on all of it. It's just not timing wise. It wouldn't be, we tend to add the close contacts as we report the positive cases. They're tied to a positive case. So you might have one that had 2 siblings that are close contacts. And so that's included under, positive cases 18. One of those kids had 2 close contacts. So they're tied to specific positive cases.
I get that. So if we're still tracking them, we're still totaling them, why would we not put it in here?
It eventually could be put in there. It could be a week later than when that positive should be shared for transparency with our public.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's not that it will never be put in there. It's just that it's sort of like a.
Yeah, I
a
mean, she
task
could
that we're-
eventually,
Gotcha.
yes, we continued, there's multiple spreadsheets, but they'll continue to add those. It just allows me to, I said, I'm just going to keep posting daily, and then we'll update the close contacts as it fits.
Gotcha.
But yeah, we could do it definitely by the month.
So the other thing I think that's related to the pause and this surge that we're in right now is, your letter that came out Monday, I read obviously as a parent. I thought I read it pretty closely. I even looked at the flow chart and satisfied myself to think that because my kids are vaccinated, they would fall into this certain category. And then, yesterday, the vaccine was approved, the boosters were approved for this younger age. And apparently effectively, if your kid was vaccinated, I'm saying this to our growing audience out there, if your kid was vaccinated prior to July 7th, they're essentially unvaccinated right now. Now they're treated as unvaccinated because of this new CDC guidance. And so part of the reason we have all these close contacts is because some vaccinated kids are now close contacts and have to quarantine or be out of school. So I think this is a huge thing. Obviously, it impacts me personally, so I think it's really huge.
They just, not to interrupt, but we did have a commissioner call today, and a specific component was addressed, and I double checked with Dr. Hanscom. I'm like, did I hear that correctly? And they basically were saying, and I'll confirm with the minutes, but that for school purposes, if you have been they're not doing the 6, then if you've been double vaccinated, you're considered vaccinated. They're not doing, whether it's been 6 months, whether you're 15 days past a booster. So they're reframing that. And I haven't had a chance to talk to Stacy yet about that, because that would change a lot for us.
Yeah.
And I feel not that it necessarily makes sense to me, because so many of the scenarios are built for whatever narrative is needed, but we're going to go by what we're told as a guideline. So if in fact they have shifted to say, for our students, if you are double vaccinated, whether you're boosted or not, and whether it's 6 months or back, you're considered vaccinated. I don't know, but that's what was said today.
Okay, because
So-
when I talked to Stacy at 2:00, that was not.
No, because
Yeah.
the commissioner call was at 3,
Okay.
and so she might not. And I gave her the link to participate in that call, so I'm hoping she was able to.
Okay, so
So there
then,
might be a change coming.
so is the advice then to parents whose kids were, I mean, I think the other thing that was confusing to me, it still confuses me, and I've asked a few questions during these meetings, is the pool testing program and the test and stay program are these two distinct things.
Yes.
And if your kid is a close contact and is basically in either of those groups, tell me if I've got this right. If they're in a pool testing program, they could be vaccinated and just part of the pool program. In test and stay, that's for unvaccinated students. And so if your kid is in either of those pools, either of those groups, I don't want to use the wrong terminology, and is identified as a close contact, theoretically, they can still be coming to school unless they test positive.
Well, definitely for the test and stay. The pool testing is only done on Tuesdays. So it's a, one-day capture that, I wasn't positive yesterday on Tuesday. And so that's not exactly the same. And obviously, if you're, it's the pool testing is really to catch asymptomatic positives. It's people who are coming to school, they feel fine, but they're carriers. That's for that. The test and stay allows people who have students who have been identified as close contacts to continue to come to school if they're still symptom-free and they get tested every day to just confirm, and they stay in school. And then they come back the next day and they come back the next day. And I know there was something about vaccinated or unvaccinated on that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think we could be clearer about, my goal as a parent is to keep my kid in school, to keep her healthy and to keep her in school. And I guess barring then the things that I can do to keep my family, wearing a mask and doing the things that all the protocols that we've become so used to, short of that, what are we advising families to do in order to keep their kids healthy and keep them in school?
Well, we definitely encourage involvement in both of those programs. The test and stay program, you have to sign up ahead of time because we get materials sent based on the number who are participating. So it's not like all of a sudden you're a close contact. Oh, I want my child to come to school. Let them do the test and stay. So there's a week lag there. And then as we have like Monday's letter, I think increased pool testing by 30 to 40 participants, not for yesterday's pool testing, but for next Tuesday, because we have to get the materials. That grows, you also need the resource and human beings who are involved with that program. So there's some resources that come through some program. They're not consistent. So Stacy's very much involved, like on pool testing day. She's the one currently doing the test and stay. We could possibly connect with an EMT, so the fire department, to be involved with the test and stay. The trainer, the Mashpee Public School athletic trainer, he is involved with the test and stay, particularly for athletes. But again, you have to be signed up for that ahead of time. It's much, I know of some students who attend Sandwich, their parent works here, and that's been a real savior because they were already enrolled, so they just get tested every day when they've been identified. And assuming they're not symptomatic, because if you're symptomatic, you shouldn't be coming. It's definitely, that's why we did our, some time with the staff on Monday. It's very complicated, and the energy level sometimes of all of us to read through a document and comprehend when, we're not, it's multiple times in some cases to just kind of make sure you have it. So I definitely defer to Stacy as our expert. She goes to all the Board of Health meetings and DPH meetings. We do have a Board of Health meeting set up it was going to be tomorrow, but I think there's a Board of Health meeting tomorrow night. So they would prefer to do it on Friday to just sort of get on the same page, talk about, I think the town is currently in the process of obtaining test kits, and they would be ordering enough for the school as well, because if they're not, I want to. But Stacy, in communication with Glenn, says that's in the works through whatever county, it's through something. So that would be something that we could also give families as sort of an extra measure of safety. I will say the antigen tests, according to Stacy, you can often get, if it's positive, you're likely to be positive, but you can get some false negatives. So I don't know if it's ever not enough. Yesterday's pool testing, I'm not sure how many participated, but I do know that 2 pools did spike as a positive. So then those individual test tubes had to be re-administered to determine which individuals are positive, and they were here today, so they had to be sent home. One of the things today that the DESI call was recommending is that pool testing goes down to 2 in a pool. So, which means a lot of pools, but then if you have one that shows up as positive, you're only dealing with 2 people. I don't know, you might as well just do everybody individually at some point. What is the point of that? So I don't know. I just don't know. I think they're just, paddling as they go and figuring things out and, swerving to avoid different things. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, although they were saying you would save testing materials. I'm like, I don't know. But that's probably coming as a change too. And just to add one last little summary piece related to attendance of students. So January 3rd was Monday when we came back. We had 15% of our students absent. So for Coombs, we had 64 students absent, 307 students were there. 80 students were absent from Quashnet, 349 were present. And then middle school, 24 absences, 210 were there. And at the high school, 53 absent, 399. Now they're not all COVID absences. There couldn't get back from Florida absences. There's lots of reasons kids aren't there. But just in general, so we had 221 absences on Monday, 239 student absences on Tuesday, and 264 absences today. And definitely, like if I just look at high school, it's gone from 53 to 59 to 75.
Did Desi say anything about remote options coming back?
No, they're not going to have that, as far as I know. There were questions about, attendance as an accountability factor. There were questions about whether they're going to do we have to do, MCAS tests, which is tied federally. So they have a meeting tomorrow with something related to that. They really don't have any answers on that because attendance, should not be an accountability factor this year because we are encouraging students to stay home when they have symptoms. And it makes no sense to me. But most of this year does not make sense to me, sadly.
Any more questions on this topic? The only other item that I had, I think I forwarded you guys the email. I had been asked by the chair of the select board about some discussion at the state level about bonuses for frontline workers. And just inquiring about the status of that. I didn't hear back from Senator Sear, but I did hear back from Representative Vieira, who said that the governor's office or the executive branch is administering that process. And I got a couple emails related, but the short answer is they believe they're on track and moving swiftly, whatever that means. So that's all I've heard. So if I continue, as I get more information, I will share that with them. I'll share that with you rather. Any other topics that anyone wanted to raise? So we do have another meeting this month to vote on the budget. And I think I'm not aware of any other items that we needed to bring up tonight. Is there any final public comment? All right. Do you want to come to the microphone, John? And just say your name for the.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is John Miller. I live on Shellback Way. I was particularly interested in some of the statistics from the superintendent about the COVID consequences and especially the total counts of absences the first 3 days post vacation. Offhand, and I know it's not apples to apples, but how do those numbers compare to a normal 3 days following Christmas? If you know.
I can share that at the next meeting specifically, but we generally have attendance that's in the mid to higher 90s. And usually after Christmas break, it's not a time when there's an excessive absenteeism. There could have been this year because it was a shorter break. So there might have been family decisions made there. But being, at the 15% or whatever I said, generally, it is lower, but I don't know what it compares to. I'd almost have to go back. Last year being hybrid, I don't know that that's the greatest comparative year. So I'd have to go back, I think, January of 20 to see, get a data for you. But we could share that at the next meeting.
Well, I asked partly in the context of, the last week especially, you can't pick up a newspaper or watch a network newscast without the lead story being the impact of COVID, and in particular, how it's affecting activity at the schools. I was trying to get some, I don't currently have a student or a grandchild enrolled in Mashpee schools. So it sounds like there was a letter that went to families earlier this week. But I think there's a lot of general interest throughout the town, whether families have a student in school at that time or not, just trying to understand the impact and the consequences, because they're being bombarded with it regionally and nationally because of the media coverage. And it was, I don't know if this would have been a venue, but the fact that the website has been inoperative for at least a couple of days. I went there, could find nothing about it. There's nothing in social media about the Mashpee schools and how it's coping with COVID. None of the statistics that you just mentioned tonight. I know we're only 3 days into it. So I guess my suggestion would be to, on top of everything else that you and your staff are dealing with, finding an effective way to communicate, at least at a high level, to the entire community of Mashpee, not just parents, what this nightmare that we're dealing with is impacting, how it's impacting the schools in the early stages of the second half of the school year. And maybe one way to do that would be to transition some of the communications that would normally go on the website to the town's website, where people do have access, or utilizing social media or something. But there's absolutely nothing out there that I could find in the last 3 days about how COVID is affecting Mashpee schools.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm sure we could do a better job in sort of reaching out to other residents of Mashpee. I think we do an excellent job reaching out to our families, not like when we, put a monthly article in the Enterprise. Not that many of our, who reads, not that many people subscribe to the Enterprise. That's one tool, though. We have our outreach coordinator who, and we're active. I don't know if you follow Instagram or if you follow, Twitter, but we do try to put communications out there as well. We always, post.
No, and that's very commendable, and don't relent on that. But this is timely, topical, current information and data. And I think all of the news coverage about how COVID is impacting public schools and private schools, teachers, faculty, staff members, students, and so forth, is generating a greater than usual interest. And then how is that affecting my town, even if I don't have a student in the schools? So all of those other periodic mechanisms to communicate is fine. But I'd like to know, and I think many others would, just because of the heightened interest that everybody has because of the intensity of the public awareness of this, would like to know what happened in Mashpee schools today, and what's the plan for tomorrow, not just 3 weeks later, kind of here's a roundup of what we've been doing over the last month or two.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to
I don't
figure.
mean to be critical, but I'm just
No.
trying to suggest that the public has more interest in what's going on and what the impact is than you might be aware.
No, I appreciate your perspective. What we've tried to do throughout this journey through COVID, even among districts, it's often varying from the very start, and trying to make sure, what was going on in Falmouth would sort of ooze into what's going on in Mashpee, and we would try to make sure everybody realized that each of our districts is unique and different. I do want to communicate to the residents. I'm not going to communicate through the Mashpee message. That's not a tool that I would support, but we do need to figure out a way to get to people like you or others who don't. I mean, everyone can get my Friday communications, and many in the town do who are not parents, but how?
Yeah.
You give me your email and you're part of every Friday, you get a pretty in-depth
Okay.
communication. Not that I'm looking for it to be shared on Mashpee Message, but I mean, obviously you're
I'm
welcome to.
not here as an advocate of the Mashpee Messages, but I think the school does have, I think you just said, an Instagram presence.
Yeah, we have a
account of its own.
Facebook, we have
And
Instagram, we
Facebook.
have
So
Twitter.
Those, and in the absence of a website, those would be the perfect outlets in the interim to get something out there without people having to come get it. It's just push it out through whatever
Yeah.
current timely mechanisms you have available. Maybe the town's website too, temporarily.
Well, that is more of there's more layers to get something that way. I would suggest that the town's website link to our website, and I know that it is currently down, which has nothing to do with
But it could
us.
be the other way around too, temporarily.
Right.
I'm
But-
sure IT could create a temporary page on the town's website where you could put things that otherwise would go on the school.
It has to be linked, though. It can't be another task that I have to go and
I
put something on the
understand.
website. But
Yeah,
we can definitely do a good job of making sure other than families know what's going on. Absolutely. I appreciate
That's
that
my main
perspective.
point. So
Thank you.
thank you for considering that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep, thanks, John. I think the timing of the website crash,
couldn't be worse.
It couldn't really happen at a worse time, but the COVID dashboard, the cases and the things that Patty was referring to are on our website and have been there throughout. That's public facing and anybody can access that information.
But John, if you send me your email, I will gladly add you to Friday's communication. I think you used to get it when
And with
Nathan
your
was,
permission, I'll forward that to anybody else that's interested.
sure.
Okay.
And obviously, if anybody is interested in what's going on with the school or how the schools are dealing with this, they can reach out directly to the superintendent's office and get
Right.
any of that information.
Yes, the town manager does receive my Friday communications as well.
Okay, so I think without any additional business, I can, oh, this is scheduled, I have a vote to adjourn here. It's on my thing, so I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do you have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Kathy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Meeting's adjourned.